Dead Show. Again, welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, joined by Chris McElwain and Sean Conley. We're here to talk about a disappointment of a defeat up at Perth. Sean, I'm going to start with yourself. Really poor second half, wasn't it?
First half, yeah. Second half, I don't think we were that poor second half. I think we created enough chances. We were well on top. Like, I think St Johnstone had 2 chances maybe in the second half, and they were both kind of half chances. So I think we created a lot in the second half, but it was poor finishing, and their goalkeeper had a good game. Hatate hits the post. Forrest should score a tap in, and a couple other ones that we were getting a sniff. I think it's probably harsh to say we're poor in the second half, but we were definitely poor in the first half, and we paid for that sin in the second half, where every the St Johnstone are sending a runner around the pitch to tell the ball boys to just stay in their seats and not bother returning the ball. And every time the St Johnstone keeper catches the ball, he hits the deck. That one drives me absolutely nuts when keepers do that. Look, we a few things went against us. Like the pitch was poor. It was like David Dickinson giving a throw in when it was clearly a corner. It was all sorts of stuff, right? But this is what happens at this time of year. Teams at the bottom are absolutely fighting for their life, and we were not fighting enough in the first half, and then not enough to overcome it in the second half. If Kuhn shows a bit more desire in the first half, then we've got an equaliser in the 13th minute or whenever it is, but the St Johnstone defender wants it more, clears it. Otherwise, Kuhn's got a tap in and scores. That's kind of we did enough to win the game in terms of football. We just didn't have enough fight to win the game and didn't overcome the conditions.
Well, the Kuhn chance, actually, for me, is the chance of the game, because it comes down to a point. It's a 50-50 between him. In fact, it's probably a 60-40 in his favour between him and a defender. Defender wins the ball and wins it really, really well. I felt we created far more clean-cut chances in the first half, and we were worse and more fragmented in the second half. There's a moment where Yang and Ida fall out on the park. The kind of dark arts. We had Watergate and we had Ballboy-gate, all that stuff. We allow them to do that, Chris, because of our performance and the fact that we've not made the breakthrough. And yeah, you're right. I mean, even 5 minutes added on time, Sean. 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. From a rest perspective, how much is it per sub? Is there like a given thing?
Rule of thumb is 30 seconds per sub, but those 2 half-time subs wouldn't count. So
what did we have in the second half? We had 3 for Celtic, 4 for... So 3.5 minutes for subs in the second half, and then you've got 4 minutes for an injury to Wright in the second. So 7.5 minutes. Listen, we're splitting hairs here. We allow them to do that, Chris. We allow the guy to give Sky Sports a wee wave because everybody knows what he's up to when he's going around and speaking to the ball boys. For me, that's down to us. And there's big questions to be asked about certain individuals. The first one is Kuhn, hooked at half-time. Again, for the second time, I think, this season. Sean said sometimes players need a spell out the team. I can't see him starting next week on the back of that, Chris.
No. Look, no excuses whatsoever. I'm not going to blame the pitch. I'm not going to blame ball boys. I'm not going to blame anything. I actually I know this doesn't necessarily always go down well, but full credit to St Johnstone. He came with a game plan and he executed it. So I've got no problem taking the medicine and say, bad day at the office. Now, look, games are not won and lost on paper, but we're top of the league. We're 13 points clear. St Johnstone are bottom of the league, right? Now, St Johnstone, I think, played, above where their position in the league demonstrates. I thought they were really good. But on our side, I thought we were incredibly poor from start to finish. I understand where Sean's coming from and saying that we certainly, I think, were more on the front foot in the second half, but our quality was poor. Our quality was absolutely dreadful. There was very few clean-cut chances, as you said, Paul John. Those that fell to Rio Hatate, who I actually think was probably our most effective player today, but lets himself down with those 2 excellent chances. I mean, he's got 15 minutes to put the ball in the net and he hits the post, for goodness sake, at one point, and then the other one is laid on a plate by Jota and just skies it. And that's poor. That's poor from a professional standpoint. Kuhn, really, really poor. in that first half. And I wouldn't necessarily have taken him off at half-time. I always think you give a player a chance to prove himself. But strong management from Brendan to do that. He obviously recognised that it clearly wasn't working. But I don't think our performance really improved, even in light of the substitutions, too much. I mean, what I would say is we weren't under the same pressure, apart from a very short spell in the second half. So it was very much St Johnstone camped in their own half. But too many times we're playing little tippy-tappy balls on the edge of the box. Too many times we're putting the wrong weight on passes. We're making bad decisions, right? And these are the top players in the country. The highest paid players, the top players, the best facilities, best coaching. You've got to do the basics well. We keep saying it. You've got to do the fundamentals well. And it was a lot of times that I noticed the ball would come to one of our players in the box. He doesn't turn around. He doesn't turn his head to see what's behind him. It's tunnel vision, the way they play. It's like the ball comes, he's got his back to goal, so the ball goes forward the way he can see. There's no taking the initiative, taking the responsibility. Try and take your man on. The only player for me that looked as though he was wanting to take his man on, until Jan came on as well, who I thought did, tried to do that, was Jota. Jamesy Forrest and Jan came on and tried to do the same, but Jota was the only man throughout that started that game that looked capable of taking a man on. So I know that Hatate had a couple of surging runs, Kalmak had a couple of surging runs, but too late. We've got to take more ownership and more responsibility on the ball, because if we weren't 13 points clear, I think the reaction at this game would be astonishing.
The reaction in some quarters actually is, and I don't know if this is a joke, Pete, if we lose this league, Rodgers must be sacked. Come on. There's lots and lots of comments coming through, and I'll try and bring as many of them up as possible. I just felt it was one of the games, like 60, 65 minutes in, Sean, where you're looking at the performance of their goalie. Absolutely. Man of the match. I don't know if he was given it. He should have been. He was excellent. But you're looking at, somebody like Dre Wright, absolutely with Kuhn in his back pocket, and you're asking yourself why in the first half. So we make the changes, and I thought we should have made the bold change. The other one I would have made wasn't made. Engels off, Bernardo on. Bernardo didn't get a sniff today.
Trying out for that.
But I thought McCowan was positive enough when he came in. There's a lot of reactions, as we always see, Sean, in the comment section. The bottom line is we've just been beaten for the worst team in the league. St Johnstone are the worst team in the league. They're sitting rock bottom. But I've been talking about this as a dress rehearsal for the League Cup. There's potentially only two teams really standing in our way between Celtic winning a treble, and St Johnstone are the first ones. And going into that game prior to today, you've got to be professional. You've got to say all the right things. I didn't think there was a hope in hell that St Johnstone would beat us. It's a different game. I get it. It's a one-off occasion. It's a different venue. Rodgers' record at Hampden's tremendous and all this stuff. But after today, I'm looking at that thinking myself, we couldn't get a win against this team. Does that concern you a wee bit about the cup game as well, Sean?
No, it doesn't actually. From what I saw today, I'm actually more confident about the cup game. I didn't think St Johnstone, they got some early set pieces and showed some fight, and actually, I don't think that's going to be there in the cup. I think their focus is on trying to survive in the league. This happens at this time of year. It does. Like these teams that are down the bottom of the league, they pull out results that they wouldn't have got earlier in the season. We should have not allowed that to happen. That's true. We should have been better. But I honestly, I don't think we were that bad. I get what you guys are saying, but I really think we were poor in the first half, and we created so many chances in the second half. We weren't our flowing best. The only thing I would have said was when we were making the subs, I would have at one point gone away from the shape, because when St Johnstone are just going just men behind the ball, one player up front, and we were just sticking to the 4-3-3, I was thinking to myself, when the sub was Maeda off and Ida on, I would have I was going, do you know what I mean? Surely at that point you can take Trusty off at that point, right? And some of the comments saying CCV was poor, I thought he was the best player in a Celtic jersey today. I thought he was one-on-one the whole game and didn't lose a single battle. I agree with that. Great.
Yeah.
I don't see why anyone would think Carl Vickers was poor. That's nowhere a problem with Sean. But I'm going to pick up on your point there about and I always go back to this interview that if Alex Ferguson talks about football, I listen, right? And he was talking about creating a bit of chaos in a game of football. And often it's when you're 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go. Create some chaos. Because at that point, Sean, St Johnstone are pretty comfortable with the shape, aren't they? Regardless of making substitutions, they made their own substitutions and they've got their own fresh legs on, right? So, Chris, sometimes that's the frustration for me. I'm not going to tell Brendan Rodgers how to manage a football game, but often I'm sitting, particularly today, in a game like today where you're a goal down and you've got that sense, as I say, after an hour, this isn't happening for us today. Change it. Not just the personnel, but actually change the shape and create a wee bit of uncertainty in the box for St Johnstone, something they're not comfortable with.
Yeah, I know, and I know we all sound like armchair managers and armchair psychologists and stuff like that, but I agree, going like for like when it was clearly not working, and I agree with your point that the issue was the lack of urgency until that last 10-15 minutes. In fact, I think I'll need to verify this, but I think they actually said on commentary that up until about the last 14 or 15 minutes, we hadn't had a shot on target since the 30th minute, which is obviously in the first half. So
yeah, but that takes away like Hatate hitting the post. Doesn't count as one target. Do you know what I mean? Like,
fair enough. And I know we were creating opportunities, but they weren't clean. You know, they weren't clean opportunities. And I think that was my issue. But yeah, look, I absolutely accept that the performance was improved in the second half. But to be fair, it couldn't have got any worse than in the first half. So, but we should have enough quality about us to break down a team like St Johnstone. St Johnstone get no incentive to go and open up and play an expansive football. They're 1-0 up. They've got something to hold on to. The impetus is on us to try and break down and break through these defences and bypass all the effects of all the things you mentioned, Paul John, like ball boys and pitch and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's neither here nor there.
That's just gamesmanship.
On us.
The ball boy thing. I can't get angry about it. It's
the same thing we did under Ange with the quick throw in. That's what you do. You utilise what you've got in your arsenal, and it's no issue with that at all. But we should have had enough about us to really get in amongst them and actually recognise where they were beating us. You know, we were out-muscled at times. We were, they were flooding the box. So they weren't offering anything in a sense going forward. So why do we need 4 men at the back? You know, why do we need 4 men at the back? Get an extra attacker on. Give us a better chance.
I know. Just like Sean says. And when Taylor came up, by the way, obviously, we've been beaten. If you've come in here for an hour of positivity, you probably won't get it. We've just been beaten for the bottom of the league table team. But if I'm going to try and pull some positives from it. We were talking at half time about the poor performers. I think, Sean, you would have agreed with the change of Schlupp coming off for Taylor. But we bring on Taylor and you think, well, here's the guy who we can all speculate about certain players. I've done it already today about Kuhn. The head's out the door, the feet can follow, to quote JP Mason. Taylor is out the door, but he didn't play like he was. He didn't play like his head was out the door. He was absolutely at it. And if there was a slight change in dynamic, it was the way that he kind of slotted into that inverted role, as we've seen him doing so often. But you're right in what you say, Sean. Just forget about playing him at the back. Stick him in, flood the midfield, play with 3 at the back if you need to, bring Johnstone in as a centre half, and then you've got an extra body up top. I think that's a frustration. But I'm also going to ask you, because it's been a topic of conversation over the last week or so, Sean, about, the split and the reconstruction and all this kind of stuff. There's a bottom of the table team beating a top of the table team. You talk about jeopardy. There's not enough jeopardy in the last section of the season. That right there shows that, do you really need a split? Do you really need the bottom 6 teams to be scrapping and the top 6 teams to be scrapping? I'm not so sure. I'd scrap it all together, if I'm being honest with you. I think today's a good example of that, Sean.
You want to go back to 10 and then St Johnstone?
No chance. I'd go up. I'm with Brendan. I'd go up to 14, maybe 16 even.
But then you need a split. Otherwise, you're playing like either very few games or tons of games.
Well, at 14, what are you talking, right? 4. Well, you're still playing each other 4 times, aren't you? But Rodgers was talking about playing each other twice. Play every team at home and every team away.
That's fine, but then you need
bigger
to
league.
18 at that point.
Bigger league. Yeah, 18.
I think everyone wants bigger league. We get sick of playing these teams all the time. We're going to play St Johnstone for our 4th time in 2 weeks. Everyone's sick of it. I think there was 1 year before their demise, we played Rangers 7 times in 1 season, something like that, because we had a cup replay.
Yeah. Was that when that was the Papatch game, wasn't it? Where Mark Wilson knocks him out and then scores the rebound. That was the replay.
Was that? Oh, I
That
don't
was that
remember. But
season.
I think it might have been, yeah. It was the 2-2 game was the Bruni when he scores at Ibrox. And then the replay, yes, I think you're right. Mark Wilson, maybe?
Yeah.
It was a lot of games that season. It's hard to remember them all. But yeah, we're all like, I think it matters more when you're playing teams fewer times. I think it does. Like, you can create narratives. We want more derbies. We want Aaron Kilmarnock up here. It's like, anyway, I don't know if we're talking about that to try and deflect from the fact we lost as in Johnston's day, but yes, we all want a bigger league, and I don't think anyone out with a boardroom wants fewer teams in the league.
Well, you're right, and I keep getting told that it's good for the bottom of the table. But I look at a league table at the end of the season, and if your 7th team's got more points than your 6th team, it just looks shambolic and amateurish. But anyway, as you say, that's a slight diversion from today's performance, and I'm keen to get the comments in. First up, it's by the way, just to let you know, I have no issue with the swearing here and there, but unfortunately, I won't bring them up on the screen because it is a family show, and it's sometimes they're on big screens in living rooms, and it is a Sunday afternoon, and I don't want to ruin anybody with a wee bit of bad language. I don't have an issue with it, but you're unlikely to be brought up on the screen if you're using the old swearies. Ewan Boy Martin, bringing you in today. Let's be honest, we have been poor since Christmas. Just lucky Sevco have been worse. Well, they have been, you're right. Paul McLean, you're in, and you're saying not a shot on target in the second half against a team who shipped 57 goals this season and are bottom of the league. Rodgers means business on what planet?
We did have shots on target in the second half. They just came quite late.
Yeah, it took late.
They came late. I mean, for me, the biggest chance in the first half was the Kuhn one, Sean, that we've already discussed. I'm just thinking, that's all about. And I'm not saying that he didn't want it enough and all this kind of stuff, because that's the kind of rhetoric I was hearing yesterday after Rangers got beat. And I was looking at Barry Ferguson. If that's your analysis, you don't know how to analyse a football game. But Kuhn hasn't been on it, right? And I think the punishment is getting it hooked at half time on 2 occasions that I can remember this season shows that Brendan Rodgers has become a wee bit frustrated with that. My issue with that is how Brendan is likely to change it up top, because what I think Brendan Rodgers might do up top is simply change Kuhn for Yang. I wouldn't do that. I'd bring Ida back into the equation. And I would, and it sounds weird because Maeder's been so effective through the middle. But Yang, right, it's one of the ones, Chris, where I think, right, you're taking out Kuhn. Yang will give you all the running. Yang looks lively. How often have I said that? But I don't think he's at the same kind of level yet as the other 3 in Jota, Maeder, and Ida, who's getting a bit of stick in the comment section as well. I think he does need game time, and he deserves a jersey before Kuhn at this moment in time. Do you agree with that, Chris? Feel free to disagree.
The one thing I would say is I don't want to take too much of a knee-jerk reaction. It's one bad result in isolation, and the fact is we are still 13 points clear.
But Kuhn's performances isn't one game.
I was going to throw in the caveat there. I think Kuhn was really consistent towards the start of the season and throughout to the bulk of the season has been excellent. So you give credit where it's due, but he's now going on a consistent run of pretty poor, pretty anonymous, uninfluential performances. He's just not really shown the same hunger, desire, and he actually looks off the pace. He looks like his reaction times have suffered quite a bit. So I would trust the manager to manage a situation responsibly. I think he's earned that right. I wouldn't take Kuhn out unless the manager feels that Kuhn needs a break. He maybe needs taking out the spotlight. And I know there's the old cliche, if you take players out the firing line, but not every player, I think, responds to that. Some players want to be in there and really trying to prove themselves. And the one thing I would say about Kuhn's performance today, not much came off for him, but certainly towards the end of that second half, he was at least trying. He was putting himself in a position, he was trying to make something happen. It just for whatever reason, just wasn't working. So, I don't know, do you give Kuhn the chance to try and recover because he is such a big player for us? Or do you say, okay, let's roll the dice on Yang? Now, I watched Yang today. I think you're right. A lot of running, good effort, good energy, but the quality still isn't quite where it needs to be. The ball that he put across, that should be a bread and butter ball going across, and it just, it's off target. The mix-up between him and Ida, to play in the first team consistently at this level, you've got to be able to show your quality in every single game. and I don't know if Yang is at that point yet. Again, not seen him in training, so no idea. If the manager decides to do that, fair enough. But I think that there was a collectively poor performance. It was across multiple areas today. Jota, who I praised to the hilt, wasn't on his best game today. It's too easy to say that he was isolated, and he was at times. But when you get the opportunities, you're looking to, come on, this is why you were brought back. We know you've got the quality. Go and put the ball in. Hatate, it's kind of similar to Yang today, funnily enough. Lot of energy, good position, good impetus. Taking responsibility. But the end product just was not there with Hatate today at all. It was one of those things that we've criticised him for, on multiple occasions. The 70-80% of what he does great, but that last 20% just wasn't there today. And you kind of kept hoping it was going to come towards the end, and it wasn't from a lack of effort, but it just wasn't there. So
we spoke about that before the game, didn't we? How to take Hatate to that next level as a footballer, and it's that end product. By the way, I thought it was a decent enough effort where he hit the post right. Engels did really, really well. I think Johnstone should have picked him up. It was a decent effort.
It's one of those head in the hands moments, isn't it? You think, God, 1 centimetre to the right and it's in. It was
the same against Rangers. Remember, he's the save by Butland against Rangers, and you're looking at that thinking things might have been different. Why take Jota off? Well, this feeds into the same conversation, Sean, about Kuhn. He's off form. He has been for a while. I do think, and I already said this previously, let him play through it. But after today, I'm thinking he's not going to play through it. Another performance like that, and you're going to be tearing your hair out with Kuhn on the right-hand side. Yang might be sharper than Forrest, but I think Forrest is probably ahead of him in the queue if you're just going to do a like for like. Do you do that? Do you bring Ida back in and push Maeda out, even though Maeda's on a great goal-scoring run? How do you play this in terms of the front three in our next game against Kilmarnock?
Oh, well, to answer the question why take Jota off, he put a shift in, so it was about 75 minutes in, and I think Forrest actually did well when he came on. He beat his man a couple of times and put some back post crosses in that were good. He does poor with he's poor to not score when he's got the open goal / 1-on-1 with the keeper, whatever way you frame that. I don't think that was a poor substitution, but if you're asking starting next week. Yeah, I think you're right. Kuhn comes out. I think Ida probably goes in. Obviously, Yang and Forrest are there as options if you want to keep Maeda up top. But actually, I thought that Ida was okay today. I thought he could have done a couple of things better, but I thought he contributed more than Maeda did. And that's, just to be clear, not saying he's a better player than Maeda. Maeda's been sensational. He's going to be player of the year. But it wasn't his day-to-day Maeda, it was bouncing off him at times. He wasn't getting on the end of things. He goes around the one where he tracks the short back pass in the first half. He probably should have hit that first time. And he tries to take it around the keeper, which might have been the correct choice at Celtic Park on that nice pitch and with players not putting in as much of a shift. But that keeper and that defender were not for letting that go. So I think in the circumstance, he probably had to hit that first time. But other than that, nothing really came to him today. So, and Ida got a bit more involved. So I'm happy. Yeah, I know Ida's up and down this season. He really is. But maybe it's the chance for him. Maybe it's time to come in.
Yeah, you're right. And, there were big moments last season for Adam Ida. He's not become a poor player. And that's the thing with regards to Kuhn as well, that it's such a head scratcher. We've seen such a rich vein of form by Kuhn up to a point, and then it's fallen off a cliff. There was moments today, as I said before, he hit his own player on the back heel. There was a moment with the ball where it was just an easy enough ball out to him, and he's almost on a touchline, and it bounces off him and goes out for a throw-in. Yeah. And you're thinking, that's the basics. That's where you start thinking it's confidence starting to creep in and all this as well. Big shout out to Ian Roy. Thanks for supporting the channel. It's always appreciated by a Celtic state of mind, and every single bit of support, I hope, will be seen in our next move, Ridiculizer. It's coming. There's nothing you can do to stop it. It's happening. Ryan M, telling you, this league is far from over. We are awful. I disagree. I'm sorry, Ryan. I disagree. And I'll tell you why. It is absolutely over. It's just a matter of time. We've seen this in the past with Celtic teams as good as teams under other managers who are now iconic in the Celtic history books. This happens, right? So no, I don't think that the league is far from over, and I also don't agree with the fact that we're awful. We're just, we're at that point where I just think that Brendan Rodgers has got a squad of players there that up until the last couple of weeks was stretched to the limit. Some of them might be showing the effects of that, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks it will just settle down again. We won't remember this result on title party day whenever title party day comes. We won't look back, but remember how rubbish we were against St Johnstone. Nobody will care at that moment in time. We will analyse the game. It hurts. It's the only football team that does that with your emotions. If you're a Celtic fan, you hate getting beat. And there's going to be Celtic fans all over the place enjoying the sunshine today. And this puts a dampener on it. But we're not awful. I don't agree with that. Claire, we were awful at spells today. I would agree. Claire Menery, a total nonsense of a performance. My God, there's so many players that need shafting. Kuhn and Hatate for starters. The reason I bring this up is Hatate is getting a lot of stick in the comment section. And who am I to disagree if people think it's absolutely pathetic or a joke of a performance? These are Celtic fans who have watched the game like you and I, and this is how you're feeling after a defeat. But again, going back to something you said, Chris, I don't want to get knee-jerk on it. Some decline with this team, that kind of thing. Ian, is it, or is it just it's a defeat, right? And it's something that you didn't want to get into the habit of suffering. Absolutely not. But I'm pretty sure that Brendan Rodgers will be as furious with the fact that we didn't win that as anybody. Yeah, listen, right, see if it's margins and you've played so well and you get beat 1-0 and it's all the dark arts with the ball boys and it's all, terrible pitch and all this and that. You can maybe focus on it. All that kind of stuff, we gave them the opportunity to do that for me because we should have been better. And hopefully Brendan will take that on the chin. Unfortunately, we never hear the post-match because we're doing this. We have to watch it back. Let us know what Brendan says after the game. What would he say? What's he going to say, Chris?
Yeah, well, I can see him on camera at the moment, and he's scrunching his face up. So, I can't hear him. I don't think he's being too overly positive about it. And you hope he's not, right? You hope he's got that degree of disappointment, and it does hurt because as fans, you want your manager to feel it the same way you do. He'll obviously take it into the dressing room. He'll talk to players. He'll and he'll try and analyse what particularly went wrong there. So and again, I think he's got enough credit in the bank to do that. Look, it's a difficult one because you don't want to come across as, oh no, it's fine, it was 13 points clear, performances don't matter, because every game matters when you're a Celtic fan. And I want to win every single game. I don't care if we're 40 points ahead. I want to win every single match. And I want our rivals to feel the pain. And, we delight at the fact that they lost yesterday, and we saw the frustration and the manager's voice, and had their manager's voice and how he felt. And you're kind of thinking, these are the things we should be capitalising on. We're top of the league for a reason. We are the best team in Scotland, but you can't be selective as to when you're the best team in Scotland. You've got to show the standards and the levels every single game, even if you're 1 point away from the title and it's almost guaranteed. You've got to show the standards and levels, because as fans, that's what we expect. That's what we expect, because we expect the best for our club. That's no entitlement. That's us, being passionate about our club and wanting to be the best. So, I want to see a reaction from this, particularly in the next few games. I'm disappointed for the fans because I thought winning the game against Kilmarnock and winning the title against Kilmarnock next week would be superb. But it's not going to happen. I do think we'll get it over the line. I'm not too worried about the chances, but there are elements today that I am worried about. The opening 10 minutes of every game at the moment, we seem to be really vulnerable, and teams seem to be aware of that and they're exploiting it. We seem to be getting more and more wasteful again. I thought we'd found a real goal-scoring flow with Maeda and then the three, these two player wingers up front. I thought, that's going to lead to goals and really scared defences, but we're not making the most of it. So I think there's food for thought for the manager and the coaching staff, and certainly for some of the players. We'll get this one over the line. I'm not too concerned about that, but there's work to be done in the summer, because I don't think we're at the level where we just want to sustain where we're at now. I think we want to build on top of what we've achieved this season, and I think we need new recruits. We need to freshen it up in certain areas, and I do think we maybe need to look at how teams are adapting against us, because we're getting found out in certain games, at certain points during games, not for the whole match, but we're getting found out at certain games. And I think the early goals we're conceding is evidence of that.
Yeah, Boggy Bob, it's the angriest he's been all season. Chronic next week, ruined, just awful, says Boggy. Boys already on their holiday, says Mark. Phil also agrees with that. Whole team already on vacation. Ryan, just before I bring your comment up, you're the guy that says that the league is far from over and that Celtic are truly awful. And because we disagree with you, we're happy clappers as usual. Absolutely not. Whenever there's something to be said in relation to the club or the football team, we call it out. There's no happy clapping here. But there's plenty knee-jerk if you think that the league isn't over because we failed to win today. And also, Derek Soulboy, don't think we're awful, have been for weeks. We were at points today, Derek, I would say that we are. Overall, come back to me at the end of the season where we'll be looking potentially at a treble win plus progression in the Champions League and tell me if you think that's awful, because I don't think it is. I don't think it is. There are moments in the season where the 3-0 at Ibrox, absolutely, we were awful. But over the entirety of a season, no, I think it's just one of the things that happens after a game where you've got beat and you think, oh, we're rubbish. I don't think we are. I think we have been at certain points, but over the entirety of the season, Derek, I disagree with that. And John Newlands need a rebuild at the back. This is an interesting one. CCV and Trusty are not up to it anymore. Kuhn has gone back to his level. Well, he's gone back to the Kuhn that we started off with, but which is his level? This is a big question for me, John. Is it that, or is it the peak Kuhn that we saw earlier on? Because he's given us an insight. He's shown us behind the curtain of what you could have. It's like, this is what you could have won. And we're back to the Kuhn that we've seen earlier on. And Hatate isn't worth waiting for the great moment. BR questionable. Why didn't Bernardo come on? Well, I was calling for Bernardo at half time. I thought McCowan came on and played pretty well, actually. But again, it's like what Sean was saying in terms of Jota. You wonder why was he hooked? Why was Jota hooked? Maybe his monitor was saying that he had done what he has to do in terms of his own physical, exertions. And this is a player, of course, who we sometimes forget didn't really play much football for about 18 months, and he's still probably getting right back up to that peak Jota that I was talking about during the week as well. Eddie Quigley, this team needs ripped up in the summer. Nowhere near good enough. Too many players can't handle being at Celtic. Eddie, I'm going to go back to the previous comment. I don't think it's a ripping up job. I don't think it's an absolute rebuild job. And at the end of the season, when you say that, if we do win the treble and we've progressed in Europe, I think that would be a wee bit knee-jerk to suggest that we need to rebuild. There's going to be things that happen in the summer that obviously will result in new recruitment. There might be players in there that will leave who are part of the first team squad, but I would probably be more inclined to say, you know what, right, we're going to get to a situation where Palma and Lagerbielke are away, right? So what you're going to get, a couple of million for Palma, maybe the talk is £3 million for Lagerbielke. Nawrocki might go out on loan with a view to the same thing happening next summer, and one or two others might go. Will a big player leave? Will a Kuhn or a Rio Hatate leave? Maybe. Hopefully Maeda's not in that conversation. There will be plenty of ins and outs in the summer. But for me, Sean, to call it a rebuild or say we're awful and we're happy clapping because we're not going to say that we're awful, I do feel that's in the heat of the moment after a defeat, and that's the emotions coming into it. What's your take, Sean?
I've just seen pop up on the feed there that Rodgers is concerned with the mentality, and that's probably fair. Since the Bayern Munich game in the league, we've had 6 games and we've lost 3 of them, so that is a little bit concerning in a sense. But I don't think it's a rip it up or anything like that. I do think a refresh is needed. I do think there's probably some complacency around being so far ahead, and yeah, I think there's some players that are just not putting the shift in, like Schlupp, who again since the Bayern Munich game probably not really been bothered. Kuhn hasn't really bothered since then, and look, there's some players have looked bothered, but today in the first half, I thought there was just a lot of players playing okay, and then 2 players playing really poor, and that just added up to not good enough against a team who just really, really needed those 3 points and had the goalkeeper be man of the match, and talking about summer, sure, we need a little bit of turnover, but we always need turnover. Disappointed by the lack of January turnover, lack of Cummings in January, and So hopefully we get a bit more of a refresh in summer, but rip it up? No, I don't think so. I think we just need a standard, just four players maybe, that kind of level.
It's refresh rather than rebuild. I agree with you, Sean. I think that's a perfect way to. And by the way, you should always be looking to refresh. Absolutely, certain players come to the end of their cycle. Brendan Rodgers knows that better than us. The mentality comment that you made there, Chris, was that somebody commenting on our stream, or was that something that's popped up on
Rodgers?
I think it was Sean. Sean, you saw
Rodgers was saying it.
Yeah, from Rodgers. Yeah.
So the mentality. What are we talking here? We're talking about the fact that you're 13 points clear and you can't go and obviously be at your absolute peak, because we have a winning mentality. That's one way to look at it. But in terms of you can make it 16 today. That's, I think, 3 times that we've not gone out and capitalised on it.
Yeah,
is that what he's talking about?
He said, sorry, I'll just read the quote. We talked about being a top team and having talent, but also having drive, desire, and ambition to win, and having spirit. And too many of our players have been too comfortable.
Yeah. Comfortable, complacency.
I think
first half mentality and attitude is disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is, I know it's not the most popular thing to do, but when I watched Barry Ferguson's press conference yesterday, some obvious as a rival, you get a wee bit of fun from that as well. But he made one point which, in his own inimitable way, I think actually hit home, and it was about the fact that there are certain games that you can get yourself motivated for. The derby games, European games, right? Footballers want to play in those games, so probably from a manager's standpoint, it's pretty easy. But you've got 38 plus games a season, and in Scotland, you're going to have tough games on tough pitches against, your provincial clubs, which are play a certain way. You have to keep your standards high. You have to, and as a manager, and maybe the manager takes some responsibility for this, because I still think the manager and the coaching staff are largely responsible for ensuring the players are going out there with the right mentality. So as much as I'm very much a defender of the manager and the coaching staff, I do think there's a responsibility on them to make sure players are motivated irrespective of the opposition, because, as I said, as Celtic fans, we expect a certain level of performance every single game. We'll always be happy we get 3 points, but even when we get 3 points, we're not above criticising the team or certain players because of the way they play, because we want to see the ethic, the attitude, the commitment, the never say die kind of thing. And too many occasions on a game like today, Kuhn not throwing himself right and to get that ball into the net. Not showing the energy and passion and commitment and that based on the eye test that you want to see until 10, 15 minutes to go. And I think that's the point that maybe Rodgers is referencing, is like, look, yes, we're 13 points clear. The consequences of losing in terms of the title probably relatively minimal. It's a low risk, but you can't tell me as a Celtic man or as a Celtic fan that there's any free hits with our club. You don't get them, right? No. You don't get them. So I don't care if we get the title over the line. When Martin O'Neill, best Celtic manager I've seen in my lifetime, when Martin O'Neill won the title in that first season, and then our performances dropped off towards the end of the season because the title was over the line and the only thing we had to play for was a cup final, I hated it, because I want to see us go out there. Don't care what position the title's in. I want to see us out there winning and showing a commitment to win. You're not entitled to win every game. Nobody's got a God-given right to go out there and beat every team. And St Johnstone, to their credit, gave us a real game today. But I want to see the effort. I want to see the effort levels up there, and I want to see the commitment up there.
You talk about commitment and effort. I mean, really, there's 2 moments in that first half that you could really pinpoint, Chris. Win the ball when St Johnstone score, and get first to that ball when you've got a chance in the 6-yard box in terms of... That's the 2 moments, the 2 big moments.
Yeah.
But obviously... And then what happens again, Martin O'Neill wasn't happy either with the drop-off, and he speaks about that now. 25 years later, it still bugs him that there was a drop-off after winning the league. I think the best reason to get the league tied up as soon as possible, Sean, is that if you're going for a treble, if you want to be a treble-winning side, and Rodgers and obviously we all do, then you're prepared for that cup final once you get into it. So there's no meaningless games after you win the league. Every single player, let's say you've got a squad, think your squad of players we're using and utilising is around 20 strong, right? Every one of them, right? You earn your place in the cup final with the last, let's say, 5 or 6 games, whatever it's going to be. So there's no such thing as a meaningless game. There's no such free hit. There's no such thing as a free hit when it comes to Celtic, Sean. No good enough today going up to Perth and getting beat 1-0. But I think you've got to strike a balance if you're talking about the game. You can't just tear it up and say we're awful, we're rotten, and if you disagree with that, you're a cheerleader. Listen, I don't take any of that personally. I've heard it all and worse many times before. But I've also, commented on virtually every single Celtic game in the last 5 years. This channel has covered every single Celtic game in the last 5 years, and I've been involved in most of them. And very, very quickly, Sean, you realise that the emotions that you're feeling directly after a game can sometimes be heightened by the fact that you've just lost a game of football. And that's what it is. We've lost a game of football. We've lost no ground in terms of the league. There's certain teams who at the moment are in a rich vein of form, the likes of Hibs, etc. St Johnstone haven't really been. They've been a wee bit better than previously in the season. But I was looking at today's address rehearsal. You're not that concerned about that because you're thinking, okay, we can go away, lick our wounds, take our medicine, and then do the job properly when we meet them in the cup. And that happens. Remember, Aberdeen came to Celtic Park and it was 2 each. And obviously we took them in the cup and we absolutely obliterated them, annihilated them 6-0. So I absolutely get it, and it can work in your favour. But it's interesting that you hear the comments coming in from Brendan Rodgers. Are there any other changes? Because obviously Sloop was hooked as well. Is there any other changes you would make for the game against Kilmarnock based on today, Sean?
Oh, tough one. I might give Hatate a spell. I don't think he was terrible today. I don't think he was bad. I don't know. I just think McKeown or Bernardo. It's just freshen it up. When we were playing well earlier in the season, we had a bit of rotation going on with those midfielders. We didn't really know who the two that were going to be starting ahead of McGregor were game to game, and it felt like they were staying on their toes at that point. And I feel like, we're talking here about, or Rodgers is talking about players getting comfortable and their positions not feeling under threat. So I don't know. I think I just want to see a bit of that. Not tearing it up, not just chucking the baby out with the bathwater. I just think there needs to be a little bit of pressure on these players from wherever. I still think, Kilmarnock are going to be fighting for their lives next week as well. They're down there. They're down in that relegation battle. So we're going to be up against the same thing next week as we were today. At least on the plus side, we'll have the ball boys on our side next week. But I think we'll be fine when we go to Hampden. I don't see that being an issue. Aberdeen, they knocked us at Celtic Park, then we scudded them in the cup. Hibs beat us in the league, we beat them in the cup. I think it will be the same thing here with St Johnstone. I think we're heading for a cup final. I'm not worried about that, but I think a couple of changes to keep players on their toes, to let them know their positions are not guaranteed, and that results do matter in every game this season. And Big Ange would not have had that, as well. Rodgers is not having it. I'm not saying, like I've seen in the comments here, Rodgers is not having it. Ange would not have it. Like Celtic managers consecutively are not having this. That's a long-winded way to say one or two.
Yeah, well, on the subject of the midfield, there's plenty of comments coming through, and I just want to bring in some more comments before we wrap it up today. I know that many of you will be waiting to get out the back into the barbecues, a couple of refreshments, and enjoy the sunshine. Opinionated Glaswegian OG, please sell Hatate and buy an upgrade. I don't think Hatate was that awful today. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll probably watch the game again before tomorrow, and we'll talk about it again. There's just things he needs to fine tune in his game. I would have actually taken off, and I said it at halftime, I would have taken off Engels, one of my favourite players in the squad, and I would have replaced him with Bernardo. But that was what I was looking at halftime. William Peeran says Engels is escaping here. He was a little boy lost. Alan Parker moaning about Hatate when he was the best midfielder. The whole team were off it. And Ewan comes back in again. Engels goes through most games with the odd good through ball. Our midfield have been very poor. Right, I think it comes back to refreshing it, the way that Sean spoke about it. I felt for big parts of the season, the midfield area, I think we had 5 going into 3 positions, was the strongest, Chris. Is it just about refreshing it? I would like to see Callum McGregor. Now, listen, I know the data guys will tell you that McGregor shouldn't be playing up top. Callum McGregor is potentially going to have his best goal-scoring season for Celtic this season. I expect him to get 1 or 2 more before the end of the season. I think that he is the guy that joins the defence to the attack. I get it all. But I do feel that we've had relationships on the left-hand side and the right-hand side that are broken down, and that's a big issue as well. Earlier this season, yes, it coincided with Kuhn's brilliant form, but it was Kuhn, Engels, and Johnstone, and they were linking up, and it was great. And you've seen the underlap by AJ and the overlap by Kuhn, and we were getting loads of balls down the right-hand side. That doesn't seem to be happening, right? And then on the left-hand side, I'm looking at today, you're looking at Schlupp, Hatate, Jota. It doesn't seem to be linking up. Maybe push McGregor, the left-footed McGregor over there. Maybe that'll work. And then you bring in Bernardo. I would, if I'm going to refresh it, the midfield player I'd be bringing in didn't feature today, Chris, and that's Paulo Bernardo.
Yeah, I would have liked to see Bernardo play. I think he's one of these players that's very tidy. Certainly what we've seen him so far, he's a very tidy player. He's good range of passing, does the simple things well, which is one of the things we were crying out for today. The question I would ask is it a personnel issue or is it a system issue? Have teams figured out how to play against this three-man midfield, and is that why they're actually cutting off those channels on the right left-hand side? Because we had almost that triangle on each side with a midfielder, a wing back, and a winger or inside forward, whatever you want to call them. That, as you say, seems to have broken down. But is that by virtue of our players not playing that system or no longer playing that effectively, or is it because teams have started to recognise that we were getting a lot of profit down those sides and have decided to cut out those options? Because I don't see. I think it's most evident. I don't see Alistair Johnson having the same effect that he was having previously. And I don't think it's necessarily about him being off form, but I just think he's been nullified now in games that we play. Difficult to say in terms of the left-hand side because we've seen some changes in there recently. We know we're going to see further change in the summer. But again, you just don't see the wing-backs having the same effect within that triangle that used to have. Engels, I would actually agree with some of the comments. I think Engels his form's dipped a wee bit from what we saw earlier. I think he had a purple patch, and I do think his form has dipped. I can allow for that because, like you, I'm quite a big fan of the player, and I think he's developing. It's his first season. I think Engels will be a much better player for us next season. I just think he's finding his role, he's finding his feet, and the one element I want to see from Engels, which we almost saw in the first couple of minutes today, was I want to see more goals from open play from Engels, because I think, as you saw in the opening moments today, the shimmy to get the shot on, and unfortunately, just if anything, hits it too cleanly, just hits it straight to the keeper. But if he hits that, a foot either side, that's one of the goals of the season. So there are elements to a player like Engels' game that I want to see improve as we go into the next season. But I do want to see maybe a wee tweak of the system. A lot of us have talked about why are we playing 4 at the back domestically? Why not go 3 at the back? Get an extra body in midfield, utilise the midfield personnel we've got and maybe take the pressure off and, mix it up a little bit. Because I sometimes feel when the midfield's nullified, the whole system breaks down. Well,
yeah, that's a good summary, Chris. And I think you also get the opportunity to do that if you win the league nice and early with a few games to spare.
No, you'd hope.
Which is another reason for getting this over the line. Danielle, you were unimpressed today. Mind that slogan: "We never stop." Christ, we never start majority of these games now. So lacklustre. Good to see you back in the comments, Danielle. Always a pleasure. And Paul McLean, the semi at Hampden has a fear factor now, so he disagrees with Sean, and that's what it's all about. Bring your comments, bring your opinions into the discussion. We're about to wrap up, even though we've got 1,800 strong watching this today. Thanks everybody for supporting us as always. It's a frustrating afternoon when Celtic don't get the result, but we will be back tomorrow at 12:30 to talk about all things Celtic. All that's left for me to say, thank you once again, Chris McElwain and Sean Conley, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.